This morning I'm in Oklahoma City talking with Lee Peoples, who since 2010 has been the director of the Chickasaw Nation Law Library at Oklahoma City University School of Law. Lee is also the Frederick Charles Hicks Professor of Law here at the institution. With that, by way of introduction, Lee, let's learn a little bit about you as a person.
Sure.
We all have our lives on the side in addition to our work lives. So could you tell us a little bit about that and perhaps even some of your early years
Sure.
growing up?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Oklahoma City. I'm a third generation Oklahoman. Went to high school, grade school here. After that, went to the University of Oklahoma for my undergraduate degree, which was in political science. After that, went straight to law school. Did practice law for a couple of years, always thinking that I would have something to do with academia at some point. And after a couple of years, decided to go to library school to become a law librarian. My hobbies, I like to travel. My family and I travel quite a bit. The family cook, so I enjoy that. That's pretty much life outside of work.
Okay, well, do you have any particular hobbies? You say you're the family cook.
Family cook,
That
yeah.
would sound like it might be sort of a hobby.
Yeah.
Do you have
enjoy
any
cooking.
hobbies, other special interests, passions that you
Along with the cooking, a little bit into the gardening, maybe not quite as much as I used to be. My daughter and I have just taken up scuba diving, so that's kind of a new interest.
That sounds like a passion.
Yeah, it's been fun. She is 11 and just got certified along with me, so it sort of relates to our traveling, and we get to do that, and it's a good time.
She's also a bit of a little artist. I saw in your office sort of a painting that she had done.
Yeah, I have a painting that she did in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We have some friends that live there and go out there pretty frequently, and they're artists, and so she's able to make that. She's also a violin player and active in drama as well, so she keeps us pretty busy.
Well, it sounds like she
Yeah.
leads an interesting life herself.
She sure does.
You vicariously
Exactly.
through her.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Now, out there, I don't remember any oceans real close, or places where you might do
No,
scuba diving.
no.
Are there any favorite spots yet, or
Well,
you
know,
learning them all?
Just getting started. We did our certification here in Oklahoma. They have a lake that you can go that's normally pretty clean, but we had an unseasonable amount of rain, so it's only about a foot of visibility. But we have been in Mexico and Hawaii, and have a trip coming up to Bonaire that I'm looking forward to. So it's been enjoyable. I'm just getting started with it, but it's been a lot of fun.
Well, sometime maybe when you get out in the direction where I live now, Washington State, we have Puget Sound, which a lot of people say is very interesting to explore in places. As far as I know, or maybe I'll get farther away from the shore, there are no great whites floating around out there, swimming around.
Yeah.
So, or anything that terribly
Yeah.
dangerous there. Yeah. Well, you already mentioned a library degree and a law degree and maybe college degree too along in there, but could you tell us where the schools were that you earned those?
Sure. The University of Oklahoma, which is just about 20 minutes from where we are today. Earned all 3 degrees there.
Well, I understand that while you were a student, you were able to do semester-long studies at a couple of universities in Europe. That sounds rather intriguing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, as an undergraduate, I was fortunate enough to spend a semester at University of Utrecht in the Netherlands, which is about 20 minutes from Amsterdam, and a very historical university town. Studied Dutch history, a little bit of European law, and that sort of thing. Was able to travel quite a bit, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to go. And had a wonderful semester there. And then, I enjoyed it so much I wanted to repeat it again in law school if at all possible.
Mhm.
And was able to save up my electives and that sort of thing, and spent my last semester at Aarhus University in Denmark,
Mhm.
and did again a lot of traveling there. Finished courses in law there, but did quite a bit of traveling, and made some wonderful friends that still in contact with today. So they were wonderful experiences, and I've been involved a little bit here with our international programs prior to becoming director. But those were excellent semesters and very good experiences.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting. I've been, in recent years, able to do some travel, including to Europe, and fascinating things you see there. Very good people you meet, too.
Oh, yes.
And I imagine you had all the same experiences.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I would think to do it as a student would be even more special in some ways.
It's nice. You get to spend more time,
Mhm.
spend almost 6 months each trip, which
Yeah.
is very nice. And then, of course, you're younger and you're with people that are your age, and so you have common interests and not tied down by much, so you can, go somewhere for several weeks and come back, and
Mhm.
a lot of fun.
Good. Well, maybe we should move on to your career. Not only as a law librarian, but I noticed when you finished law school, you practiced law for a while. Should you tell us a little bit
Sure.
about that part of your life and maybe what that was all about?
Yeah. So after graduation, I took a job with a small firm here in Oklahoma City. Worked there for several years. My practice was general civil litigation. Did a lot of writing, research, which of course has served me well, and I've been able to relate those experiences to the classroom. Had a few small trials that I handled. Took some depositions, discovery, that sort of thing. Just got to do a lot of different things, and whenever I teach the research for practice type classes, I can always bring in examples still from that time, and I'm very glad that I had that experience.
Mhm. Well, you didn't stay in the practice full-time forever, as some people do, but you moved into the academy and came here to the university, and you were in charge, or worked at least, with the International Legal Studies program.
Yes.
Please tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, that was our former dean, Larry Hellman, just asked me if I would like to be involved in that, and started off with a summer program that we had for Chinese law students who, in most of the world, you were an undergraduate when you were a law student. So these were kids from 17 to maybe 21 or 2 that wanted to come to Oklahoma City for a month in the summer, learn a little bit about American law, but also see the sights. And so I was in charge of that program. We grew it from maybe 10 students to, toward the end, we had 30 students, and then some lawyers that came along as well. It was a lot of work, as you might imagine, to arrange all that, keep track of these kids, and make sure they have a decent time. But it was a lot of fun as well. They got to meet my family. We had them over for dinner. So that was a good experience. Then I would also work with our students going abroad and arrange those programs. It was really helpful to me because it gave me some budgetary experience. And as someone who wanted to be a director, that was something I wanted to get.
Yes, you need to know how to live within reality.
Yeah, and how all the university systems work and all of that. And it's kind of rare to be able to get that as an associate director. So I was really pleased to be able to do that. And when I became director, I stepped back from my role in international programs. That was always the intention, because it is very time consuming. Had the good fortune to go with a group of my colleagues to China one summer for a joint conference on Chinese American law, but a lot of sightseeing and touring around, and just had a wonderful experience doing that.
Well, I imagine you brought a fair amount to the table for that program, and that you yourself had been an international student twice in your undergraduate years in Europe, but not China.
Yeah.
But got to be fairly transferable.
Well, sure, yeah, and if nothing else, you understand what it's like to be in a foreign place and not have a lot of people that you can turn to. So yeah, it was a good experience.
I would say a foreign place where nobody speaks your language,
Yes.
but actually that's no longer seems to be that unusual.
No.
I find many people who do speak English, and some
Yeah.
very, very fluent English in a lot of these countries.
Oh yes, and a lot of these Chinese students were quite good writers as well as English speakers.
Mm. Well, now you've already alluded to the fact that you may have had a little agenda early on to become the director here at the Law Library. Can you tell me a little bit about how it was you sort of decided to become a law librarian? And more importantly, perhaps, did anyone play a role in that?
Sure, certainly. Well, it was always, I always, as I mentioned, wanted to be in academia in some capacity, with having a background first in legal practice. And Nikki Singleton, who was the director at the University of Oklahoma College of Law Library when I was in law school, was probably my first contact with a law librarian. I had no idea really that there were even law librarians. And she was a mentor to me during school, I think through the formal mentoring process, but also became a very good friend and still is to this day. She was my research professor that taught us how to do the first year legal research, and that sort of, I guess, lit the spark and just introduced me to the fact that there were these people that ran the library, and they also taught, and they also sometimes did some writing. And so I stayed in contact with her after graduation, and then after a few years of practice, my wife and I were married, and my wife also went to law school with me and also is very close with Nikki and had her as a student. And so we both went down together, and just she had us in and we visited about what the profession was like. She enrolled in the library school at the University of Oklahoma. She got me an internship at the law school there in the library and was very welcoming and encouraging. And so she was really the primary person that got me interested. About halfway through library school, I got a job at OCU, my first job as head of reference. And the director there, Judy Morgan, who has since retired, but she was another very influential person and a mentor to me. She let me try out a lot of things, taught me a lot about what the job would be like, the politics of a law school, how things work, how the budget works. I mean, she was really fantastic. So Judy was another excellent mentor. Pretty early on, Barbara Bentliff asked me to co-author a book with her, and I've also remained in touch with her and like to catch up with her, and she is another person that early on in the career helped me quite a bit. And then I had a couple positions in MALL, the Mid-America Association of Law Libraries.
Including president.
Yes, was
Each of those.
was able to serve as president.
Don't know how to say no, perhaps.
Yes, it was early in the career, but a really nice position. And John Christensen, who was the president before me, was another great mentor. He worked closely as vice president and then president. And then as MALCO, the Mid-America Law Library Consortium, Darren Fox and Randy Diamond were before me as presidents there, and so they, colleagues, but also definitely mentors.
A lot of those are also more or less getting down to your cohort.
Exactly.
So you've got some long time relationships ahead.
Absolutely.
And good ones.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. It's
knowing some of those people.
They've been fantastic people and helped me quite a bit.
Well, you've said a lot about your work, but you haven't talked too much about what you do specifically now and have done here as director. I've just finished a nice tour that you gave me of this facility in which the school is now housed. But you were involved in the whole process by which that all came about. Would you like to talk a little bit about
Sure.
that aspect of your work? Not everybody gets to do it in their careers, although an awful lot of us, you stay around long enough and it may happen. But tell us a little
Sure.
bit about that
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
And some of the things you were able to accomplish.
Well, we were in a couple of buildings, really 4 buildings on our main university campus, and they all needed significant work. And really, there was a process that it even predated me. Judy Morgan was building the case for many years for a new facility or improvements to the facility. So, this goes back many, many years of preparing studies, and the building really was quite inadequate. Very fortunately, we had a new dean come in and a new president who, and also at the same time, this building that we're in now became available. And those things sort of came together over the summer. I was invited to come down and sort of a confidential meeting. Don't tell anyone this is happening, but let's look at this building. What do you think? Would this work? And it's a fantastic building in the heart of downtown Oklahoma City. It was built in 1910 as Oklahoma High School.
Mm-hmm.
So it's built as a school. It looks very academic, looks like a castle. It's a Gothic style building. There was a bidding war for the building. We were successful, thanks in part to the chairman of our board of trustees, who was a former mayor of the city. And the plans began very quickly with renovating the building. And I was on the committee that maybe 3 or 4 other people that were charged with making this thing happen. It was a very intense year of working because we moved in just over a year ago. We moved in mid-semester. We wanted to get in as quickly as we could, and I learned a tremendous amount about planning library space and also law school space. Was assisted tremendously by my associate director, Jennifer Prilleman, and really every member of the library staff. My administrative assistant just moved heaven and earth to make this happen. It was a great experience. I'm glad the move is over. We're settled down. If you would have seen me a year ago today, I would have been running around like crazy, jeans and a t-shirt, talking with the builders.
The uniform
getting things.
needed for what you were doing at the time.
Yeah. It was a lot of work, and I'm very proud of what we've done.
Mm-hmm. Now you were masquerade as a director and a professor, but
That's
wearing
right.
at least a coat occasionally. Yeah, in the old days it would have been a tie, but in today's world you don't see as many of those.
No.
Yeah. It's interestingly, as I drove up, I saw the building, and it is vintage on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that's an interesting building. I expected, because I didn't really know the current history, that it might be sort of vintage on the inside. There are bits and pieces of that you've retained. There's one room with murals on the wall that were from the old building. You did describe that they had to be restored rather extensively, but they're there and they're beautiful. But they sort of look vintage to the 30s actually, and you told me that's about when they were painted. But you walk in here, it's state of the art in all the right senses of the term. You guys did this right, is everything I can tell.
Well, thank you.
It looks it feels it. You showed me around, and it seems to work well for you. And I gather that's your position on the result as well.
It was a partnership with our technology, Chris McLean, head of technology, and others, but I was able to try out a theory that other librarians, not to my knowledge, no law librarian had tried this before, but I tried a theory called Design for Learning, which was a Yale University librarian pioneered this maybe 10 years ago, where you don't start with the library by saying we have this many books and we want this many tables and this many offices. You start by trying to figure out, by talking to the faculty, surveying the faculty and the students, what are the behaviors that encourage learning in the building? Mm-hmm. Would it be group collaboration? Would it be individual study? 5 or 6 different types of activities that could encourage learning. So you figure out what the faculty thinks are important activities and ways to learn and to study, and then you see what the students think. And luckily for us, those really coalesced around quiet individual study, but also spaces to collaborate. And so with that knowledge, then we worked with the architects. I surveyed other projects that were going on in the country, other law schools, and we set out to design a building that could have that quiet study space, but also that noisy, collaborative social space, which we saw on the first floor with our learning commons.
That's right. That was an impressive facility. Elsewhere on the first floor, the lower level is, I guess it was a big auditorium at one time, as you explained, when it was back at the high school days.
Yes.
And it had some uses over the time. You have what, in my law school days, it was described as the clean lounge. And
Yeah.
It's a nice, comfortable looking facility with a immense high ceiling. And
Yeah.
very, very welcoming. And yet you're right. From what have been told and what I've read, today's law students came up through an education system where collaboration between students and among students was encouraged,
Yes.
programmed into what the teachers were teaching them how to do. And so the idea of the group settings where you can get together with a group, be it a study committee perhaps in the first year, or just some people you've known along the way, and you get a little bit beyond that year. It must be very helpful.
It is, and there is a trend now among lawyers to collaborate more in practice. And so we've tried to embrace that here, not only in the library spaces, but throughout the building to allow them to have space to work together productively.
Well, you represent the newer generation of academic directors and leaders. I could say that because I'm sort of part of the old guard that's gone into retirement now. But when I look at you and some of your colleagues and at your level, I think, well, this law librarianship, or what we're going to be calling it from now on, is in good hands. But you must have some perspectives that I wouldn't have. I mean, I came through it when things were perhaps a bit different. With changes now, the new technology, the more fiscal challenges that academics, law schools included, face, have obviously had some impact. Would you like to describe the field as sort of what you think is going on and what you think may be coming in the very foreseeable future in terms of change or evolution or whatever?
Yeah, well, it's really been not, since I started my career, but maybe 5 or 10 years ahead of that time and continuing now. Seems like a time of tremendous change for our profession. It's been exciting to be a part of that. Some people comment sometimes that they think everything's going downhill and we won't exist anymore in 5 or 10 years. I don't subscribe to that. I do think it is a very challenging time on a number of fronts, especially when you think about our responsibility. One of those is to preserve and to provide access to knowledge, legal knowledge and information. And we're all really trying to forecast and think about the future and make sure that this information and this knowledge is accessible. We hope that we're right. We take a number of approaches to try to make sure we're right, but it's a big responsibility, and I take it seriously, and I know that others in my position do as well. When we moved, we left behind almost all the reporters, the print reporters, the print digests, and so we think about those things. Are we going to be able to access this information into the future? Are we going to be tied too much to the subscription databases and we have no control over the price? These are important things. But I also think our profession is changing, and the libraries are changing in that we're not a place to just put things anymore. The library is a place where people come to do things, to interact with their colleagues, to learn things. Our roles are shifting. The librarians that work for me are doing so much more teaching and training now than they were 10 or 15 years ago, to the point where I think everybody that works in a law library needs to be able to conduct a reference interview, do some type of teaching, maybe not in the law school classroom, but maybe working with faculty, getting them up to speed with technology or helping them, being able to help a student with a simple question about an online database. So we're doing so much more of that, and that's what makes me hopeful for the future of our profession is the databases and the way that lawyers are searched for information continues to get more and more complicated. Mm-hmm. Contrary to what some people think, all law is not on the internet. It's not all reliable and accurate. And, and the way that lawyers practice now with the paperless office and knowledge management, we need to do a better job of training our students to walk into that ready to go. I mean, it seems like we have studies every couple of years. Yeah. Students aren't prepared. Well, by teaching classes, and I don't do this yet, but I hope to do it soon on law office technology and those sorts of things, I see that as our role very much in the future, preparing students to step in day one and be ready to go with whatever they do in their career. So I think the future is looking good, and to me it comes down to having the right people. I'm fortunate to have a dean and a president and a faculty that are supportive of me, but also having the people that work for you, that makes all the difference.
Yes, the people who work in the library can make or break the director.
Yeah.
That's a little trade secret we may not want to share, but I won't clip this either. I'll leave it in.
You're absolutely right.
Any of them watching someplace.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I have a daughter who was about probably your contemporary, more or less, and she's an attorney. And to hear her talk about what she and her colleagues would like to see coming into the profession right out of the law schools, you just described you want to try and prepare your students to do. Yeah. They do need to know a bit more about how to step into the real world. The days when we could send them out with sort of an awful lot of information, but not necessarily how to put it into a business setting, are probably over. Yeah. And firms, they're not, and lawyers don't want to basically provide the practicum that they couldn't get before. And it's a real challenge for the academy, but one that I see every law school working to meet that I visit, and which isn't, of course, every one of them, but it's a lot of them. Yeah. And I'm sure it's pretty universal now.
Well, and as librarians who straddle the theoretical and the practical side of law, we're in a great position to make the library a critical part of the law school curriculum and the law school academic program by leading the way and teaching those practical skills, and getting the students involved and instilling a spirit of really self-reliance. I mean, that's what I think a lot of the firms are looking for, the students and also just the businesses. A good number of our students don't practice. They go in using their law degree in other areas, but lawyers should be self-reliant and be able to figure these things out. And so we have a real role to assist with that.
Yeah. Well, you said a few minutes ago that there are those who wonder if we as a profession will exist in a few years, and yet you've put your finger on exactly how I think, and I'm sure you think, obviously you think, that we can ensure that we will be around, because we're adding value that's now needed in different ways than perhaps was done in older times.
Absolutely.
That's good. Well, I do have one more item I noticed in looking at your background and in preparation for today, and that I wanted to ask you a little bit about. I was sort of intrigued. You're listed as the co-founding editor of the Legal Information and Technology Journal.
Yes.
Please tell us a little bit about that and how all this came about and what it's about.
Well, this started really late 2009. talking with my colleague and friend Randy Diamond, the director at the University of Missouri. And at that time, if people remember, the SSRN, which is the Social Science Research Network, was kind of the leader in online publishing of articles. I was putting my articles up there, our faculty were, and they were reporting the download counts to the dean every year. And so SSRN was kind of the flagship place to be. Law libraries, we did not have any, we weren't represented at all. Our scholarship wasn't there. So Randy and I, it's really Randy came up with the idea, and I was fortunate enough to ask to join it. We said, let's start up a subject matter journal for legal information. And we figured out the name Legal Information Technology Journal, put a board together. And then at that time, SSRN, and I think they still are, requiring you to pay for this. So we were fortunate to get MALCO, the Mid-America Law Library Consortium, was our first sponsor. Then later on, the Academic Law Library Special Interest Section and MAL, the Mid-America Law Library Group, also shared that obligation. But started out small. We now have over 2,000 papers in the e-journal. We have pretty close to 400,000 downloads, and we were very excited very recently to have reached the level, according to SSRN, where the journal is now self-sustaining. It has enough interest, it has enough papers, where we don't have to continue to seek out sponsorships. So we feel very happy with that. We're definitely looking forward to continuing the journal, and I think it's been a venue for me and us and our colleagues to get their scholarship out there and get it noticed, and plant our flag with the rest of legal academia, and continue to increase the awareness of our scholarship.
Well, that sounds like you have been successful, you and your colleagues, with that journal, and I'm delighted to hear that. Just from my own perspective, I think anything we as a group of colleagues can do, or subgroups, that is successful, certainly helps everybody very much.
Yeah.
Well, Lee, we have been talking this morning, but for a while, but we're nearing the end of today's conversation. And before we do, it is the custom to ask if there's anything we've not discussed that you would like to mention.
Well, we did talk about the journal and scholarship, and I just would, say a little bit about library scholarship. I've really been fortunate to have some mentors that have encouraged me to do that, and I'm fortunate now to serve on the editorial board of Legal Information Review, which is a new Hein journal that is hoping to, a peer-reviewed journal, hoping to encourage people to publish more, and it's something that I've enjoyed as part of my position. It does take a lot of time and effort, but publication is really one of the brass rings in legal academia. It's very important to do that for yourself, but also for the profession to have a discussion of these important ideas and concepts. So I've enjoyed it very much. I hope that others will, and I hope that the Legal Information Review, the SSRN Journal, may play a small part in helping promote that and also preserve it for the future.
Good. Well, perhaps with that, Lee Peoples, I should thank you for taking your time this morning to talk with me on camera. What you've said brings a perspective to our history that is not one we often see, because frankly we're looking primarily for more seasoned people, more on my end of the profession, who are out in the retirement community but bring a lot of history. But we also are targeting, as I did this morning, people who seem to be up and coming. I can say it, you can't, but you are.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
And have a good reputation, and have an idea of what we're doing currently that's going to give us the future that we see that is, should be there. Legal education, the broader legal profession, others will benefit tremendously by us bringing to them the kind of information and techniques in getting that information that we know how to do as part of our training. And that's important. So by way of thanking you, besides going on and on, I want to thank you on not only my behalf, but that of our colleague Michelle Wu, and Frank Hodek, and Dick Spinelli, with whom I have the honor and privilege of being able to go around and talk with people like yourself this morning, Lee, and put together this oral history of law librarianship for the Spinelli Law Library Reference Shelf portion of Hein Online. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor to be included.